Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom. If you're looking for someone to save you, turns out it's going to be you. Today's episode, we're going to give you 5 things that we want you to think about while going through your divorce, particularly if it is not particularly nice or you have nasty, narcissistic, manipulative, controlling, high conflict type. Hello, Mum.
Hello, Laura. Hi, everyone.
I guess it also it does go for people who have avoidant exes as well. Or even if you do have an amicable divorce, I think this is something that mindset is everything. And I know this is a legal kind of, we talk about legal education and we're going to put it into these 5 things. But I think anyone who is struggling a little bit, it's sometimes good to just take a step back from it all and look at it from a top-down view and go, what am I doing? What am I doing on a day-to-day? What systems have I got in place? How am I making sure I'm taking care of myself? And I would love everybody to get a piece of paper and a pen and look top-down at your situation today and make sure that you are doing these things or considering these things. So let's get into it, Mum, because let's face it, you guys are in the driving seat. It is you. And number 1 is your actions are going to make or break it. Not a lawyer. No. So let's talk about that, Mum. So have you seen incidences where people have got the best lawyer in the world, but it doesn't help them because their actions are ridiculous?
Yeah, maybe they're not listening to their lawyer, or maybe they're doing things usually on a weekend, and then you find out on Monday, sometimes not from your client, but from the other party's lawyer. You know what your client did on the weekend? No. What? Yeah. You can tell your client everything that you need to know, but you can't anticipate a circumstance they might get them into. And a court and your lawyers can only work with what they've got. And ultimately, it's you.
It really is you that's going to make or break it. It's what you do. It's what you say, whether you listen to your lawyer, whether you're not listening to your lawyer. And I know there's a lot of people out there who, you know, sometimes they've got lawyers too that aren't really good. They've got not very good lawyers, but they have a great outcome in court because the law is the law.
But the person is the person that they show themselves to be. Yeah. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
So whilst it is always good to have a good lawyer, you need to remember that your actions are making or breaking the outcome of your case. So remind yourself that. So what kind of actions do you like a client to do, Mum? So the listeners today, what kind of things should they be doing that you've seen in clients that help themselves? Is that so to speak?
Yeah.
What kind of things?
Always courteous in communications with the other side.
That's a big one.
Yeah. Don't go doing anything that someone could point a finger at. Like, don't go partying and get outrageously drunk and, you know, just don't give the other side any ammunition like that. It's a bit like running for politics. You have to keep yourself very clean and not doing stuff. Oh, for goodness sakes, don't send messages, text messages or Instagram posts when you've been drinking or even not.
Okay, so your actions will make or break. Next one we've got here for you is set yourself boundaries. If you want to save yourself, you're the person who's going to save yourself. Set yourself some boundaries. What kind of boundaries should clients set, Mum?
I think one good one is never let your ex in the house. If it's the house you used to live in, fair enough. No, you can't come in now. I live here now. And that gives you a safe space to operate from. If it's in a new house, of course, don't let them in. Don't share everything with them. Don't tell them what you're doing on a daily basis. It's really hard. If you've been a couple and one of you's had the most of the say, it's really hard once you've separated to feel that you don't have to run things by them anymore. You can make your own decisions. And so, yeah, I think that's a boundary that you can set. And when they try to say, what are you doing that for? Oh, I wouldn't put my money in that account. Or what are you using the credit card? No, none of your business. This is my life now. It's very, very affirming to say that.
Yeah. And I think you're right. If you've been in a long relationship and you've always been a couple and you've made decisions as a couple, and you might even still, have that little voice that, those things they might have said to you all the time, still might be sitting in your head. You've got to kind of say to them, or to the voice of them repeating it to you, say, no, this is my life. These are my decisions, and get used to the looking out for you. And if you've got kids, your kids.
And if they've always said you're no good with money, or you're not a good cook, well, you don't have to buy into that. Okay. Or maybe you can say, I'm not a good cook. I say that about me, but I'm fine with that. I can live with that.
And that's going to take us to another one that we're going to talk about in a minute. But with this setting boundaries, Mum, so basically if you've got a high conflict or manipulative controlling person and you really don't want anything to do with them, you do have to kind of put up some barriers, Look, if you want to be amicable, and if you are amicable, that's great. You're going to a school event, you can sit together with the kids, you can do that kind of thing. That's amazing. But don't think anyone's going to look down on you if you go to a school event and your ex is horrible to you, and maybe you've escaped from, family violence or something. You do not want to go and sit with them. Don't think people are going to judge you. Make your boundaries and go, no, I'm not going to be one of those kind of divorced couples. I'm going to go sit over here because I don't want to be anywhere near you. You don't have to say that in front of the kids. And it is sad that for the kids, but the kids don't want to see you next to them if it's been that kind of relationship.
Well, the kids won't want to come back to either of you if you're sitting near each other and there's tension. And it doesn't matter. You can hold yourself out proudly as who you are. And if the other person is pushing and wanting to sit together, well, that's their lookout. You're not there to make them look good. I think those boundaries are really important.
And then when it comes to communication boundaries, Mum, they could be sending you emails, text messages, phone calls, you name it. And if you're not amicable, surely you'd want to set up some boundaries of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Every one of those is like a little assault on you, especially if it drags you back into feeling a bit like you did in an emotionally coercive, controlling relationship. So, yes, set some boundaries. You might tell them, you're going to say, I'll be reading your emails on Fridays. If you send texts and so forth between then and there, I'll look at them all on Friday. Or don't send me texts. You can only communicate with me through the app, or you can only communicate with me by email. Something like that, so it's not in your face. You might silence notifications from your ex as long as perhaps the kids aren't there at the other place, and you might need to know if something happens to them. You might not have it silenced then, but just think about some ways. Some people have got a separate phone, which is the phone for all of that stuff, where where the children talk to their other parent on that phone. That phone's the one that gets the messages. And sure, you've got to carry it around with you, but at least it's not in your face all of the time.
That's really true. And if you are getting constant emails and constant text messages, then maybe you should listen to some of our other episodes, Bombarded with Legal Letters, or Do I Really Need to Respond to That? Or our really popular one called How to Respond to a Word Salad Letter. Go and listen to those. I'll put them in the show notes. But basically, guys, top down looking right now, close your eyes, not if you're driving, but close your eyes and just have a think. Wait, am I and do I have good boundaries? Where are they getting in? I did hear someone describe this, and I think this is really interesting. If your ex is a horrible ex, someone described their ex as the velociraptor from Jurassic Park, running around the cage testing to see which bits were electrified and which weren't. And your ex, when you leave them, particularly if they're manipulative, controlling, may try to be a velociraptor and run around the outside of the cage to try and find out where they can get back in. And you need to right now, top down, think, how is my ex, if it's horrible, getting into my world and reaching into my life when I'm away from that person who you've deliberately left or they've left you? How are they getting into your life, and what can you do about it? What little gaps in your Jurassic Park cage can you close?
It's great, because how scary was that scene? It was, and we all knew there was going to be a spot where they might get through. Yeah. So No, that's a great idea. That,
Mum, I did see a meme. A side note though, Jurassic Park has really giant gates, and someone wrote, "Well, it's a bit of a giveaway that they had to plan the dinosaurs on getting out because they built the front gate for dinosaurs." But anyway, don't be one of those people. Don't be divorced and have a Jurassic Park gate that's big enough to let your ex back in. Because what's the point in getting divorced in the first place? Set those boundaries up, and if it's a nasty person, think of him as a velociraptor that's trying to get back in and plug those holes. Is it communication? Is it or him or her? Is it physical? Is it at the school events? Is it where is this happening? How can you plug it up? And with communication, there are those parenting apps, aren't there, Mum?
Yeah, yep. And those ones, I mean, there's a few. One's called Our Children, and there's
My Family Wizard, and there's even some that have auto responses that you can't actually write words in.
I think that would be interesting because that would stop. That would stop a lot of it. Yeah, I think that's one of the ways that you can do that. And you know how you feel relieved, or whoever, if you come out of a bad relationship, feeling relieved is a very common feeling. And as light and free and relieved as you feel, that person who was managing not only their life but yours as well is going to feel frustrated and upset. And so they're not going to say good things to you in those early stages. So set those boundaries up good and early and be clear. One of the things is to remember that you're an individual. Whether you were part of a couple or not, you should have kept your individuality. They've encroached on it, but now you're reclaiming it.
And that's, I guess, where we get to the next one on how to save yourself.
Yeah.
And that is reaffirming who you are and who you will be is what, good point that you pointed in there. And it sounds hippie, whoopie, woo-woo.
Hey, nothing wrong with hippies.
But yes, Mum, I know. You hippie. Who thought a hippie would become a lawyer? But reaffirming who you are. So one of the things that can happen to a lot of our members and listeners is they get an affidavit or a legal letter. Your client is a terrible parent, you're a terrible dad, terrible mum. They're really bad, and here are all these really bad things. And you might get an affidavit that you read and you might just think, holy moly, I'm terrible. I'm a bad mum, I'm a bad dad, and really horrible accusations. But if you deep down know that you are actually, people said, hey, you are actually a good parent. If people are saying that to you and then now all of a sudden they're saying, oh, you're a really bad parent, you need to remind yourself you are a good parent and you can do that. Mum's got a way, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but my way that I've been telling people to do it is to sit down and do like one of those, brainstorming bubbles. I'm a good parent, and then put off little sticks and write, I'm a good parent because blah. Who's told you you're a good parent? When have you seen examples of you being a good parent? What outcomes have you seen from your parenting? And remind yourself. Now, Mum, you also say that you have clients who get really upset when they read an affidavit.
Yeah.
And you say the only time they feel better is once they've finally sat down and done what?
Put it all in writing, put it all in an affidavit. If you get an email dumped on you and it is an interim matter, like an in-between sort of case, and you've only got maybe 10 pages to respond to a 10-page assault on you, it's hard sometimes to answer every allegation while also putting your side of the story. And so generally the best way to deal with it is to look at those things in the affidavit that are going to be looked at by the judge, and ignore all the stuff that's just having a dig at you. And I know for me, the hard thing was when you've been married to someone for, years and years, and they say these things about you, and you think, well, but they should know me better they know me very well. Is that true? Is that what they're thinking? So yes, so you do seek to justify and correct the record. That's the thing you want to do, but be guided by the legislation. Just put down the sections that put your case. And then you can say at the second part that I'm aware this is an interim application and there's a limited time and limited pages. And I don't agree with most of the things in my ex's affidavit. And I reserve the right to answer that at a later date should they become relevant. And then just answer the ones that are really important for the hearing.
And I think if you are in that situation, there is an episode called Things You Might Not Realize the Court Doesn't Care About. I'll put the link in the show notes for that. So it's things like cheating. I don't know. What are some other examples? Got a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Like there's a whole list of things that people think the court's going to give a care about. And shockingly, the court doesn't care. So those things you don't really need to address too much. So go and listen to that episode. But if that is you, but yes, you will feel better even if you go through each of their allegations and go, here's my proof. You don't have to put it in the affidavit, but you can physically check it. And if you've been gaslit your whole life or your whole relationship, you're going to need to reaffirm with evidence for yourself, not necessarily for the court, but even for yourself. You can go through and answer each one and go, I know that's wrong because this.
And we talked before about setting up your own, a new email address with a reasonable name in case it shows up on the court documents. And in that, you can put that affidavit in there, send it to yourself as an email. And then if you want to, you can answer every single line, every single paragraph, and you can attach all your proof. Don't send it to anyone else. Just keep it
Just do it for you.
Do it for you. And then if your lawyer or you want to answer the affidavit from the other, one day down the track, all of that information's there. You will feel a real load off your mind when you see it in black and white with the evidence. And one of the strongest things anyone, I think, told you, Laura, in the early days is write it down.
So I think the best thing you can do, and that tip for you, is reaffirm who you are. So if you're feeling off kilter, one of the things that I hear a lot of members, they start to self-doubt themselves. They start to doubt, did this happen? Did I see that? Did I do that? So reaffirm, go back to your core, go to a psychologist, get some help, write down your core values, remember who you are, and don't let go of that. And that is going to help you because it's you in the end that is going to be in a witness box if you go to court, and you're going to have to believe who you are. Otherwise, no one's going to believe it. Does that make sense?
That's true. And if the other person sends an affidavit or letters that are full of attacks on you, when it gets to court, there's nothing showing about them. They haven't put their positive side of the case. They've just shown that they don't hold the other parent in a very high regard. And so they'll often be undoing of themselves.
That's true. Yeah. Okay.
I used to say the more they write, the more ammunition I've got when I was at the bar, because they would just put it all in, not knowing that it was bad.
It lacks child focus, I guess.
Too right.
It's showing that they're not focused on the children. If you've got children, they're not focused on the children. They're just focused on trash talking you.
One of the phrases I heard once was that some people show that they hate their ex more than they love their kids.
Oh,
Isn't that sad? That's what that demonstrates, that sort of nastiness.
All right. So we've got your actions are going to make or break it. Mm-hmm. You've got to set your boundaries. You've got to reaffirm who you are. And then the next one is don't shoot yourself in the foot. So, Mum, can you tell us, how do people listening make sure they don't shoot themselves in the foot? And there's a lot of shooting yourself in the foot right in the early stages, isn't there? Are you living separated under one roof, or are you about to leave your partner? Please go and download our free Before You Go checklist, a list of things that have been created by Lynn Galvin, a family lawyer specialist of 35 years, all the things she wished her clients had collected before they'd left. Save yourself a lot of money, subpoena heartache and drama and disclosure issues by doing this checklist before you go. If say, go to www.thedivorcecourse.com.au and click on Before You Go checklist. And then the next one is don't shoot yourself in the foot. So, Mum, can you tell us, how do people listening make sure they don't shoot themselves in the foot? And there's a lot of shooting yourself in the foot right in the early stages, isn't there?
There are. And we do talk to people about that in our, don't do these things when you're just leaving. But other things they do is quiz the children, and that sullies or ruins the children's evidence when they talk to a family consultant. Don't steal or sneak a copy of the other person's correspondence. Just be very above board with stuff.
Don't be tricky with disclosure.
No, even if it's just annoying, do it, because if you haven't got anything to hide, you'll send it and you're always up to date then.
Well, I do see a lot of members writing questions like they've asked for this much disclosure. I don't understand why. It's just more control. I don't want to do it. But basically what you're saying is don't shoot yourself in the foot. You don't want to end up in a court case or before a mediator or anything, not doing disclosure. And if it's going to make them happy, do it. It's a bit of extra work, do it. Yeah.
Yep. Why does 2-year-olds say tar? To make mum let go of the biscuit, my favourite saying. And why would you give them the documents they ask if there's no skin off your nose doing it? To stop them making a big point about it. Yeah, don't give them an excuse to say things about you. Even though your motivation is that you feel like they're continuing their control over you and their assault on you. Really, just send the stuff over if you can do it and just stops that argument.
If you are listening and that disclosure's gone ding in your head, we have a great disclosure episode where Mum talks about what's reasonable, what's not. We also have a disclosure checklist that you can download that's based off the pre-action procedures and the Court Act. So you can go onto our website, thedivorcecourse.com.au/disclosure checklist, or you can just click in the show notes, you can click the link, but you can download that and that will help you. Yeah, it's free. Yeah. It's free. So, Mum, realistically, shooting yourself in the foot, there's another time you talk about when people shoot themselves in the foot. And I kind of wish we hadn't used this analogy because it sounds painful every time I say it, but there's the pendulum swing. For someone who's gone through a manipulative controlling, coercive controlling, narcissistic, family violence, and if this triggers you, please call 13, 11, 14. But for those people, Mum, how do they shoot themselves in the foot? Because they're getting out of this. Yeah. How do these people end up in trouble?
Yeah. I think I've read a study somewhere that confirms this, but in my mind, in my years of practice, people from coercive controlling relationships or out of a marriage where one person was kind of top dog and they weren't. My client would come in and say, you don't understand how clever they are. You don't know, wouldn't believe how smart they are. They will trick you. They will trick me, And just, they're ready to take anything and just walk away, right? It's not worth it. I'm not brave enough. Then they get to a point when there's enough distance in time from the separation where they go, no, hang on a minute. No, I want what's fair. And they become more like a client or a person from a home that didn't have a violent or coercively controlling atmosphere. That's how a well-balanced person, I guess, would appear. But unfortunately, that little pendulum that was sort of swinging very much in favour of their ex then comes down centre for you, then almost always swings over to the more what seems to be unreasonable rejection. And it's like all the anger that they didn't release during the relationship, the pendulum swings and they go, no, why would I do that? I'm not doing this. They can't tell me this. And then the lawyer needs to bring them back. And our listeners need to understand if they've gone from neutral to that everything he does is just an assault on me, or everything they say just continues the abuse and I'm not having it. I think what we say to them, Rose, is you may have to just stick it out for a little bit longer to get your property settlement, children's matters sorted. And then you can be upset and angry in your own way and process it in your own way. But the court kind of looks at everything pretty well in a vacuum. And I've never seen a judge go, well, no wonder they didn't give that to that person because of the way they were treated. They go, no, legislation's this is the law. You do the right thing and there's no excuses. So if you're not using lawyers all the time, where if the lawyer doesn't identify this and point it out to you, maybe this will help you realize it in yourself. Maybe ask some trusted friends. Am I being the unreasonable person now?
Mm. And I guess even if you haven't been through violence and you're just super angry with your ex because maybe they cheated on you, or I don't know, they seem to be having a better life than you and you're really struggling and you're just so angry with them. that anger can make your court case last longer. It can make your court case cost more. It's something you need to work through and get through it so that you can be reasonable with compromise, because you will end up in front of a judge if you can't sort it out yourselves. And that's the last thing you really want to do, unless you're a horrible person and you want that kind of thing. But okay,
and by the time you get to trial, so many matters settle on what they call on the door of the court. Everyone's dressed up. Your barristers are there. You've got something reasonable clothes on. You've got your friend there, and all set to go. The judge has got the whole day clear, and you settle it. Your barrister talks to their barrister, and next thing you know, you're signing up a document and settling it. Lots of people think, and including, I think, why the legislation has changed, that there has been a feeling that the reason it's settled at the door of the court is that finally all the evidence was in, all the valuations were done, and everyone knew each other's case. And I think the thing that they've neglected to consider, with all due respect to the government, is that sometimes it settles at the door of the court because it takes that long for a person to process their grief and anger and so forth and be able to think straight without thinking emotionally. So if you can identify if you're being emotional, identify it and tamp it down so that you can continue to be reasonable, you may end up settling your case a lot earlier without, having to get through this process. Get some counselling. I think even if you don't think you need it, even if you feel relieved, in fact, especially I think if you feel relieved, then there was something seriously wrong in the relationship.
Yeah.
And you may need to talk to someone.
It does kind of seem like a big ask to be like, don't be emotional during your divorce.
No, I know.
Because I think you'd have to be a psychopath not to be emotional. So I don't think that's what Mum means. She just means if you've got big emotions that you haven't dealt with, they're going to come out in everything that you do, and your decisions are going to be skewed. And when your process of grief or whatever it is that you're dealing with comes out the other end, you're going to think differently and you're going to go, oh, my behaviour, or this may have made things easier. So let's just quickly go through it. We've got your actions will make or break it, not your lawyer, unless they're really, really bad. Then you've got set your boundaries, top down, have you done that? Then we've got don't shoot yourself in your foot. So don't shoot yourself in the foot. So make sure that you're not doing stuff to sabotage yourself. Then we've got reaffirm who you are, write the list down, remind yourself, don't lose sight of who you are when you're being attacked, because that can really affect just everything about you during this process. And then the last one, Mum, is standing up for yourself. And I think this is something a lot of people who've been in a relationship, and I'm going to say particularly women, and don't get mad at me, ladies, for saying this, but you might have had a partner who did everything. They drove the car. I don't know. They did all the things, and maybe they didn't let you do anything. So you've always kind of been taken care of, so to speak. And you're just like, who's going to take care of me now? Well, the thing is, it's you that can take care of yourself. And I know it's hard, and for the men as well, to everybody, but it's hard to understand at the time when you're going through it, and especially if it's an emergency, it's a horrible time, or you're panicking or whatever, and you're looking for someone to save you. It can be you. You've just got to reach deep in and pull that fierce person out. And Mum always says, take your fierce friends to the lawyer, take your fierce friends with you, because at that time you are collapsed in, you're caved in, you're a shell of who you could be. But you will eventually find the person you were before. If you've been through that kind of stuff, or that fierceness in you needs to come out, you need to pull that out and bring it along, as well as your fierce friend. Because if you can't stand up for yourself, your lawyer will try, but you need to tell your lawyer what it is that you want them to stand up for. And they might go, I'm not sure I want to do that. And unless you're standing up for yourself to your lawyer, then the whole situation isn't going to go the way you want it.
That's a very good point, Laura. It's a very good. And I think over the years, the way the Family Law Act was with kids, for instance, the lawyers would say to people, you've got to accept 50-50, or this judge never gives sole parental responsibility. And, you know, in the face of that advice, if you're still a little bit timid inside, then you might find yourself accepting that. But you actually have the power to instruct, no, I don't want to settle on that. I want this to go to court. And the judgment, when the matters went to court, you know, there was a lot less 50-50 than when people reached agreement. So I think their lawyers may have had too much influence. So you've also, if your boundaries are a bit soft or had been a bit soft with your ex, they may be a little bit soft with other authority figures. But as for standing like your independence, and I'm not dumping on anyone here, honestly, we've all been there. I can remember just quivering with rage after a long time. But the day, Laura, that I put food on the table that I had bought with my wages, your brother was wearing an outfit I'd bought with my own money, I just felt really good.
Once you can say, oh no, I'm going to survive this. This is okay. Because it is a big stressful time. It is a big change in your life. But once you can start to see those small changes that you can make, you can save yourself. You can do this. You can get this done. And I think the biggest thing to help empower you, and it is about empowering yourself, and we talk about empowering all the time, is education. The more education about this issue, the more you know, the more powerful you'll feel, because you know you're not walking into the unknown. Fear of the unknown is a big thing. So educate yourself, listen to these episodes, listen to Mum, listen to your lawyer, ask questions, make sure you understand it. Don't treat it like some people do when they go into their financial planner or their accountants and they're like, blah, 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 GST, tax, blah, 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 blah. And
where do I sign?
Okay, cool. Sure. You go into a lawyer and they go, blah, 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 sole parental responsibility, blah, 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 blah. You need to understand it, because this is, I mean, you probably really should understand the money stuff too, but you really need to understand it. So go and educate yourself. That is one way to empower yourself.
Because you're the expert in your own life.
Yeah.
And that lawyer is the expert in law. And between you both, you tell him a bit about your life, you learn a bit about the law, and between you, you will get the best outcome.
And if you are worried about your lawyer, if you want to choose one, we've got an episode called Red Flags, Lawyers and Red Flags. And we also have an episode called How to Choose and Use Your Lawyer, 5 Ways You Didn't Know. So you're the person who is listening today that this universe has sent this message to, I'm talking to you right now. Have a look top down. Are your actions making or breaking your case? Are you standing up for yourself? Have you set the right boundaries? Are you shooting yourself in the foot? And have you reaffirmed yourself against false facts and accusations? And if you sit down and make a plan right now to firm up those boundaries, to reaffirm who you are, and to make sure you're not doing any mistakes, you are going to have a better journey, and you'll realize it's you that's going to get you through this, not us, even though we'll be there with you. We'll be your guides, but it's you that's going to get you through this, and not your lawyer. They're just going to do the law stuff. It's you that's going to get you through this, and we'll be there with you every step of the way. But I think you need a little bit of a tough talk to everyone today, because sometimes it's a good idea just to take a step back and have a look.
I think so. Talk to yourself as you would talk to your friend, and acknowledge your strengths and the things that you have achieved and what you've withstood over time. And you're making decisions for you and possibly you and your children. And you're a grown up, and you're just as powerful as your ex.
And we're so proud of you.
Yeah. I love hearing how people have learned things and you know, how strong
the stories.
they are.
And look, we get some sad stories, but we also get the happy stories. We get people who don't want to stop listening, but they have to, because they're done. And we hear those stories and they make us cry, don't they, Mum? They make us cry. And those people have made it through, and you will make it through too. Yeah. So if the universe has reached out, grabbed you, shook you by the shoulders and said, oi, go and do some work on yourself right now, then go and do some work on yourself. And thank you, Mum, for letting me put this one in, because it's not particularly legal, but there's some great tips in there, and we will see you all soon. Thank you, Mum.
Bye, Laura. Bye, everyone.
Bye. If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.